G'day and welcome to New England Today. And today, it's solar power. How important is solar in the mix then at the moment?
Yeah, so what we're seeing in the market now, instead of a rising price through the day, we're seeing a hollowing out of the price during the day. So we're seeing negative prices in the middle of the day, and solar having a huge effect. And what we're seeing is that the NEM is struggling with an understanding, and AEMO is struggling with understanding how we actually manage the solar generation now, because we lack dispatchability, we lack the batteries. So AEMO is actually thinking about how we can manage particularly the rooftop solar, but also the daytime solar. Daytime solar from a solar farm is easy. You switch it off, okay? But the rooftop solar is still generating. You can't necessarily switch it off easily without installing batteries. But often through the day, you'll see on the market, the arbitrage market, a minus $50.
Wow.
So if you're going to take power off if you're going to generate power onto the network, you're going to actually pay to generate power to the network, and the people that are using power off the network are going to get paid to use that power.
David Mailer is an expert in this area. He's installed so many solar farms, and I caught up with him in his office in Uralla.
I was asking what I could influence, and how I was going to influence building resilience into regional communities and agriculture. And I started to ask questions around declining terms of trade and agriculture. I had a background in agriculture. I was farming 16,000 acres of dryland grain at Goondiwindi in a family business, and I started to ask questions about whether this was sustainable, and sustainable for a couple of reasons. Climate change, rising fuel prices, peaks in water and fertiliser and a few other bits and pieces that were coming along. And I was starting to read some information or textbooks that were really about challenging what we think about sustainability and resource management. David Montgomery's Dirt, Tim Flannery's Future Eaters, that's sort of Jared Diamond's Collapse, and I was starting to think around how I was going to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. When you get out and see what's what and get some facts around that, you find out that things that drive decision-making policy around the world, free trade decision-making policy around the world, is related to social aspects rather than economic aspects. And so, you've got to factor social aspects into those decision-making processes.
Can I just ask you there, so you've got economic aspects here, social aspects here, which goes first?
I think they go hand in hand. I think you've got to understand, and this is fast forwards to a realisation that science doesn't have all the answers, economics doesn't have all the answers. There's a social aspect to our decision-making process that we've got to understand, or try to understand. There's no simple answer to this complex problem, and that's part of the conversation I was having in my head that came out of some of that reading. These are scientific information that asks those questions. If science was the only answer, we'd have a solution to the problem.
It's an interesting thing from my perspective coming out of Sydney, and I'm from Uralla originally, and you're based, that's where we are at the moment, in Uralla. That's a big picture to get from a small sort of, even the New England is a smaller view of the world. You don't, you've been everywhere, but how did you think you can be in a town of under 2,000 people and make some impact of that size? How do you envisage that?
I think we saw, well, coming from agriculture, we don't see people as a problem. People are actually part of the solution. And we see, from our perspective, the essential nature of an economy is bound on people, or bound in people. And so having a regional background, but also a real purpose in how you influence regional resilience, financial, socially, and environmentally. It wouldn't make sense to be plonked in Sydney or Newcastle. To a large extent, you get lost in that. But the other thing is if you're going to walk the talk, you've got to actually be in the place where you can walk the talk. And our work through Morelli Solar is scattered across regional communities across the country. We've worked in Queensland, South Australia, on the New South Wales Victorian border into Tasmania. So, and they're all been regional communities.
All right, can we just talk about commerce for a moment? Your company is completely private money. There's no government money put into yours at all?
Our company.
Your
yes,
company.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no government money. And we pride ourselves on the fact that the first project, solar project in Australia that we built was the first commercial solar project in Australia. And we actually, as part of that group of people that was involved in building the Chillamurra solar farm at Goondiwindi, we approached the federal government and the powers to be to support us in that first project, because that first project was high risk for us. It's we're individuals that didn't have a high net worth, and we're putting ourselves on the line. And we actually got knocked back, and knocked back on the basis that Australian companies didn't have a capacity to build solar, and so we weren't eligible for a government grant. There were 12 solar farms built in Australia that year. We built 2 of them. The other 10 were multinationals, and they all received government grants of some description.
So you're saying, all right, it's you took the risk on, it was your money, but you also said something pretty huge there, that people were saying that this couldn't be done in Australia by Australians.
Yeah.
You've proved that, God only knows how many times now, that it actually, you can do it, and it can be done here, and it is an Australian business. It doesn't need outside money.
Yeah. And the way it was built, it wasn't built by me as an individual. It was built by a group.
Yes.
Group of different businesses, different individuals. It required a group of people to come together to facilitate those builds. It required a lot of work from a lot of people. It wasn't, I was only one cog in the wheel. There were a lot of other people that did a lot of hard work, a lot of more hard work than I did. It's quite easy to be the dumb end of a hammer, which is effectively what I am. We install these things. There's a lot of other people that do a lot of hard work behind the scenes that requires a lot more intellectual.
So how long does it normally take to say, do you have a sort of an average size array that you can put together? How do you?
Yeah, so we've traditionally on a 5 megawatt AC connection, a 9 megawatt DC install behind that AC connection will take somewhere around about 12 to 14 weeks to commission.
Weeks,
yeah.
Wow.
It takes a little bit of logistics and management, and so you don't start an installation before you actually lined up your logistics. We're trying to get the equipment in place in a timely manner. So, the framing system, the modules, the inverter transformers, the battery sets, all turning up in the right sequence, and we're off and running. And 12 weeks, somewhere between 9 and 14 people can install a 9 megawatt solar farm in that time.
You've got to be running on a clockwork, though, to be able to. I don't know why I'm comparing this to building a house, but the things that can go wrong and the directions it can go. But if you've got it obviously nailed into a pretty clean plan.
Oh, we're adaptable. If some
Like
wheels fall
weather,
off, whether wheels fall off for some reason, something doesn't turn up on time. There's plenty of other tasks you can go on to, and it's important to be able to switch into other parts of that if the weather doesn't go with you, to manage expectations. And the other thing is that you can't be afraid of labour. You can't be afraid of staff. Staff are what makes you the money. The staff are what actually get it installed. And so, I think it's the funniest thing from my perspective is that we're trying to mechanise some of these jobs. The mechanisation comes along with a whole heap of cost. And in most cases requires a person to operate it that actually is paid significantly more. You need a robot. You need an engineer to program the robot. The engineer is expected to be paid several $100s an hour, not $50 an hour cost. And so we don't think about labour in real terms. Labour's about productivity. And from my perspective, as long as we attach a certain number of modules per hour to our framing system, as long as we've set up a certain amount of framing per hour, the labour works.
It's an interesting thing too, and it comes back to where we started. It's the social impact too. It's the social. You're working with human beings to get some technology up and running. But that obviously, a lot of those people would be coming from either they're locally sourced or they may be people who travel to do it from other places. But it's still about them creating networks. They have to be part of the social fabric to be able to make all this stuff work. Mm-hmm. So there's a real art in making sure your work team are the right people and in the right mindset. No?
The right mindset.
Yeah.
Right mindset. We've taken people from all sorts of different backgrounds. We've taken people that have never had a job before, and through 6, 8, 10 week, 12-week period, got them in a mindset that actually is become part of a team. Skilled them up to think about what they're capable of, and moved on to some of these people that we've taken that have no job experience, 22, 23, 24-year-olds that have never worked in their lives before, have moved on to other jobs simply because they have a mindset that says and a skill set that says, I'm capable of more than this.
Can you give me a sort of a rough understanding of what you mean by solar is the cheapest as compared to wind or gas or coal?
Yeah, the latest numbers I've seen is that renewable generation is probably between 3 and 8 cents to generate a kilowatt of power, somewhere around about that. A coal-fired power is about 15 cents a kilowatt hour. Gas can be up to $1.40 kilowatt hour. So we're talking about some pretty expensive generation when we get into gas in particular. Gas is used usually to come on and fix shortages in the market. So it's a quick fix. And when we look at the energy market, the price can vary between negative prices on the market, which usually coincides with solar, to really peak prices, $14,000 a megawatt hour. Okay, which is equivalent to $1.40 kilowatt hour. So we're talking about very big fluctuations in power prices from the retail point of view. We don't see that necessarily in the price of electricity we pay at the house or the business. But what we see is a mixture of that price, and so we see the high price generation being in your power bill as a percentage of your power bill. There's transmission costs in there as well. There's retail costs in there as well. But to a large extent, the big fluctuation you see the big risk we see in our power prices is power prices going up simply because we haven't prepared enough renewables in this space to actually keep your power price down.
How important is solar in the mix then at the moment?
Yeah, so what we're seeing in the market now, instead of a rising price through the day, we're seeing a hollowing out of the price during the day. So we're seeing negative prices in the middle of the day, and solar having a huge effect. And what we're seeing is that the NEM is struggling with an understanding, and AEMO is struggling with understanding how we actually manage the solar generation now, because we lack dispatchability, we lack the batteries. So AEMO is actually thinking about how we can manage particularly the rooftop solar, but also the daytime solar. Daytime solar from a solar farm is easy. You switch it off, okay? But the rooftop solar is still generating. You can't necessarily switch it off easily without installing batteries.
So we're in a situation, don't mind me dumbing this down a bit for me, but so when the sun's really shining, when we're in the peak of the day, we got so much juice pumping into the system that there's more than we need. So it becomes a negative cost. It's actually you generating. But as that sun...
And quite often through the day, you'll see on the market, the arbitrage market, a minus $50.
Wow.
So if you're going to take power off if you're going to generate power onto the network, you're going to actually pay to generate power to the network, and the people that are using power off the network are going to get paid to use that power.
If we're easing out of coal, easing out of gas, and heading more towards renewables, the solar and there's wind, the potential is there for that to be able to take up that slack if we have a battery arrays?
Yeah, so interestingly, to a large extent, wind and solar go together. And can use the same infrastructure. What happens is that the wind usually drops through the day, so you've got a window of opportunity that you can actually have the same infrastructure and the same capacity infrastructure generating solar through the middle of the day, and the wind picks up at night. And so that's interesting from our perspective. So what you're seeing now is wind projects that are actually incorporating solar.
So we're talking now then in real terms, and we haven't gone into blue sky thinking or making up stuff here at all. The potential with what we have is about scalability, about being able to increase the amount of wind, increase the amount of solar, and have some sort of capacity to store that energy.
Yep.
And with that 3-point triangle, coal and gas could ease out.
Coal and gas will ease out. That's the reality. You can't get a commercial loan to build a new coal-fired power station. The only gas generator I believe they're building at the moment is with federal money.
Yeah.
Okay. So commercially, the money's not available to build new coal-fired power stations without government money. And that's driven by a couple of things. One is commercially it doesn't stack up. and the second one is climate change and the risk of a carbon market, globally a carbon market coming back to haunt the investors or the financiers. So, it's high risk. Where I think that we failed here in this country is that we haven't identified clearly those risks, and it's become a planning issue. We've been hedging an election cycle. We haven't been hedging a generational cycle, and so what we're getting to is a very confused state and a rush to come up with solutions to immediate problems that we're facing without actually having that long-term planning strategy around how we're going to manage this. And I suppose as a business, Morelli Solar's business has been talking about this for a number of years, that how do we actually take advantage of this transition period, and been talking about what are the opportunities here. We've got a distributed network. We've got a distributed network that covers all of the state. Why do we need 3 reses in this state? Why do we need to invest 20 to $30 billion of taxpayers' money in new transmission lines if we've already got the transmission infrastructure? Yeah. It's the question. Is it the smart play to add a significant amount of cost to the transmission network that's then paid for by the consumers, the households, the businesses, through the network?
We're touching on politics, and that's not what this is all about, I guess. But I've got to ask. Recently, our state opposition called for a moratorium, which basically says, in my mind, and I'll be happy to be corrected, stop everything. We can't see what's going on here. Just slow down. Let me have a look. In the meantime, anyone who's doing work in this business environment has to stop. Is that how you see it?
No, we can't stop. That's just not a tenable position. We'll take it back a step. The state opposition was in power when they put in the reses. They were in power when Cabinet made the decision to do this. It seems a little bit like dog whistling from my perspective to call for a moratorium. Now, the one good thing out of call for moratorium is that maybe there'll be a little bit of thought going into, is there any other better solutions to this? Is it possible that the planning got it wrong? And as I said, we've been saying for a long time there is underutilised resources, and I'll reflect when the coalition was in power. We actually approached the department to say, where was the medium voltage network considered in the plan for the reses, and they actually admitted that it wasn't. And so there is an opportunity here in the local member calling for a moratorium and the opposition calling for a moratorium, in that pause and think, did we get this right? And did the previous government get it right? We've got to actually remember and understand that the previous government put this in place. For them to ask for a moratorium
on their own work
is a bit odd, but maybe it's a recognition that they got it wrong.
That's David Mailer with some insights into renewable energy. I've also written an article in the New England Times, so you can check it out there as well. You can read the full story. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's really important. That subscription, when you hit that little red button, says that you're watching. It lets us know that we can keep producing this sort of material for the New England and exclusively for the New England. It also lets us know that you're watching. It's important. It's important to know that you're doing that. It's all free of charge. The New England Times, New England Today, it's all free of charge, and we're going to keep it that way, but we need to have you involved in it. So that's all you have to do. No cost, just a push of a button. That easy. Until next time, talk to you then.